breaks it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
And a very good evening to you. That's exactly what we're doing on this Friday edition of Africa World Hour. We're winding the week down, but not slowing down in terms of what's happening in and around your world. We'll certainly bring you up to speed on the major developments. So it's 60 minutes of the very latest news from here, the heart of Africa, to all corners of the globe. We're bringing you the faces, the voices, and the perspectives that matter, and that includes yours. So do reach out to us. Plus 2763 4089126. That's the hotline number to use if you want to share your perspective. Let's have a look at your top stories this hour.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Kenya President William Ruto has paid tribute to the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, describing him as a true patriot and statesman whose legacy will endure in the country's democratic history. Dozens are feared injured, and crowds at the state funeral surged forward to view his coffin. It's reported that many people have collapsed, with at least 5 ambulances helping those injured. Earlier at the funeral, Ruto honoured Odinga's commitment to the people of Kenya.
One of the greatest lessons he taught us was this: in the noble task of statecraft and nation building, there is room for all of us, competitors and collaborators, rivals and allies, bound together by one higher purpose, the greater good of our republic.
Madagascar's new military leader, Colonel Michael Randrianirina, insists his ascension is not a coup, as it's backed by the Constitutional Court. Randrianirina has been sworn in as the new president of Madagascar, and the ceremony took place at the Constitutional Court in the capital, Antananarivo, where a large crowd gathered to watch. He said his top priorities were basics such as water and food. The BBC's Sami Awami has more.
There are high expectations for the new president to deliver, particularly in improving basic services such as water and electricity. Malagasy people also expect more tangible results in combating corruption and ensuring greater government accountability. At the top of the agenda, however, is a smooth transition to democratic governance. That process is already facing numerous political obstacles and legal ambiguities.
The National Dialogue in South Africa has completed nominations of sectorial representatives to the National Dialogue Steering Committee. This follows the first national convention held on the 15th and 16th of August, which approved the steering committee's mandate, responsibilities and composition. A total of 26 sectors have submitted names for nomination. The list has been handed to the Eminent Persons Group for review. The group will submit recommendations to President Cyril Ramaphosa for final approval. This is a spokesperson to the President, Vincent Makwetla.
So the EPG will submit its recommendations to the President in his role as head of state and convener of the National Dialogue for finalization. Once approved by the President, the steering committee will coordinate the rollout of public dialogues across the country.
President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is in Washington ahead of crucial talks with U.S. counterpart Donald Trump. The meeting comes a day after Trump spoke to Russian President Vladimir Putin and agreed to hold a summit in Hungary to discuss how to end the war. On arrival, Zelensky said Moscow was rushing to negotiate to stop America supplying long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. John Sudworth from the BBC has the latest.
The question about Tomahawks, Mr. Zelensky was trying to frame it as if this is a sign of Russian panic in an attempt to urge President Trump to remain strong to provide this weapons system. But I think it was never guaranteed. Mr. Trump had hinted, but it often seemed to suggest that it was more of a leverage over President Putin. And I think given that we're now moving into this phase again of summitry diplomacy, the talk of Russia as a partner for peace with Washington, I think the possibility of those Tomahawks being signed off today must be called further into question, I think.
And finally, U.S. President Donald Trump says a second summit with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin is on the cards after what he described as a very productive phone call on the war in Ukraine. As we mentioned, he just met Volodymyr Zelensky in Washington. The phone call will be followed up by a meeting next week between the two countries' foreign ministers. And if that goes well, a face-to-face meeting between the two leaders will follow later. The BBC's Sarah Smith has more.
This proposed summit is the result of a 2.5-hour phone call between Presidents Trump and Putin yesterday, a call held at Russia's request. Mr. Trump has been considering selling powerful long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, which could hit targets deeper inside Russia, something that was discussed on that call with Mr. Putin. President Zelensky will ask Mr. Trump to sell him the Tomahawk weapons when they meet in the White House later today. He may find that, once again, Donald Trump has been persuaded by Vladimir Putin to back off his threats to get tough with Russia and instead give the Russian leader more time to talk about ending the war.
Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on African World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
At 7 minutes past 9, still to come on the program, we will look at South Africa's gambling agency to look at not only its proceeds revenue, but also to look at a severe gambling problem in the country, as it's been reported that 50% or more of those who contribute to the revenue of the gambling entity are people who are actually using their social grants. And of course, we'll also look at ructions amidst Zimbabwe's ZANU-PF governing party. All that coming up on the program. But let's start with this. South Africa's Deputy Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Mapaseka Steve Emily Letsike, says the empowerment of girls and ensuring their rights is not only a moral imperative, but also a catalyst for sustainable development. She was speaking at an event to commemorate the International Day of the Girl Child in Johannesburg. The United Nations General Assembly declared October 11 as the day to recognize girls' rights and the unique challenges girls face around the world. Nhlanhla Mahlangu has more.
The International Day of the Girl Child focuses attention on the need to address the challenges girls face to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights. The commemoration event held at Midrand High School in Johannesburg featured motivational talks, panel discussions, and learner voices under the theme, "The Girl I Am, the Change I Lead." DAV, the Department of Basic Education, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa united to empower girls across South Africa, marking the day with the Change the Complement campaign. Deputy Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Mapaseka Steve Emily Letsike, says the International Day of the Girl Child is a reminder that the destiny of the nation is tied to the destiny of every child in it.
A nation that fails its girls, it fails its future. But a nation that invests in them, educationally, economically, and emotionally, builds an unbreakable strength. So to our girls and learners who are here today, let me say this. You are not leaders of tomorrow. You are leaders of today. The world is already being shaped by your voice, your courage, your refusal to be silent. You are the heartbeat of this democracy. Your worth is not up for negotiation. When society tells you that you cannot, tell it that you are already.
The Change the Complement campaign, launched on International Day of the Girl Child, challenged the norm of appearance-based praise. Instead, it urged South Africans to broaden the way girls are complimented, empowering them with a recognition for courage, creativity, intelligence, and achievements. Unilever Head of Beauty, Wellness and Personal Care in Southern Africa, Palva Sessions, says the campaign urges all South Africans to celebrate girls for who they are and for what they do, not just how they look.
Our goal with this movement is twofold. Firstly, we want to inspire a behavior shift in how we compliment girls. And secondly, we want to help people reflect. What happens in the gap between what was said but what was actually heard?
Dr. Andile Ngube from UNICEF says every girl deserves to be protected and empowered.
For us as the UN, it's a human rights issue. It's a child's rights issue. And I think when we're engaging in these interventions and we're talking about girls and talking about boys, we must remember we are talking about the rights of a child. Globally, about 133 million girls are out of school for different reasons. In South Africa, it is mostly associated with teenage pregnancy, and there's enough evidence around that. And we found that evidence is showing us that if we do not have this conversation as communities and as with girls and with boys, we are likely to lose even more girls.
The 2025 International Day of the Girl Child celebration served as a rallying point for renewed commitment to invest in girls' education, leadership, and protection. It also reinforced the message that girls are not just waiting for the future, but they are shaping it now. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Ntanta Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Right, 11 minutes past 9. Let's get on to our top story now. We talk about this issue that's been part of public discourse, particularly around ZANU-PF deepening succession crisis that's threatening to tear the organization apart. Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, the former army commander who helped bring President Emmerson Mnangagwa to power during the 2017 coup, is now reportedly accused of treason in what analysts say marks the most serious internal rupture since the ousting of Robert Mugabe 80 years ago. ZANU-PF is currently holding its 22nd annual National People's Conference in Mutare near the Mozambican border. The conference is taking place amid deepening internal divisions and mounting public suspicion over President Emmerson Mnangagwa's alleged plans to extend his stay in power beyond 2028. We speak now to Zimbabwean political commentator Rejoice Ngwenya about these developments. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So Zimbabwe is witnessing these internal tensions, rifts in ZANU-PF before, but what is markedly different about the latest developments that we're seeing with Vice President Chiwenga? We mentioned the fact that he was a strong ally for President Mnangagwa. What has brought things to this heightened position?
Thanks, Tsepiso, for having me. Well, look, I'm sure that from South Africa, it looks like a very dramatic scene of, what do you call it, blood on the floor. But for us, we have lived through ZANU-PF for the past 45 or 50 years. You know, we know that this play has been seen over and over again when things seem to be turbulent before conferences and congresses. But there are a few exaggerations here and there. You know, you have just mentioned that Emmerson Mnangagwa and Constantine Chiwenga come a long way back. They were partners, for want of a better term, in crime in 2017. And I should say that there are more people talking on behalf of Chiwenga than himself. So for now, really, I would say that, you know, there's a bit of exaggeration, you know, ructions in ZANU-PF. We've heard that since 1980. So I believe really there are some certain narratives that need corrections for this term.
So you say it's an exaggeration, but if we look at what the Army General has been reported of saying that he has repeatedly accused President Mnangagwa of sins of the past, and that transforming ZANU-PF into a personal empire seems to be what his own mission is. So to what extent do you see this as something that is real or just performative?
Well, many progressive Zimbabweans have been asking the question that if Emmerson Mnangagwa and Chiwenga were partners in 2017, not even well before then, why is it that it's something that he has begun to raise
Mr. Ngwenya, I'm not sure if you have suddenly gone on mute or if it's the network. If I could just ask you to repeat that issue again, that response again, saying that many Zimbabweans who witnessed the midwifery of President Mnangagwa through General Constantine Chiwenga, what are their thoughts around this? Okay, we're going to see if we can get him back on the line. But Rejoice Ngwenya, political analyst, who is basically saying that, this is really nothing new. It comes around this time when the party holds its annual meeting to do excavation around where it is, particularly in terms of its own power dynamics. But if one remembers that the Army General was himself the one who ushered in the presidency of President Emerson Mnangagwa, and you'd recall at the time that it was understood that President Mnangagwa was a strong ally of former President Mugabe, but he then was ushered in through a coup, which was seen as one that was cementing the final end of the Mugabe era, which was seen as an authoritarian one, full of patronage. But the question is then why then would President Emerson Mnangagwa be divorced from those patronage networks? Because he himself was a strong ally of President Mugabe. And the same question then would be asked of Constantine Chiwenga. If these rumors are believed to be true, does that mean that he then has not been part of those who've benefited from the spoils of the patronage networks? So as Rejoice Ngwenya saying that there seems to be an exaggeration of this extent of the rift. So we'll see if we can get him back. It's 17 minutes past 9.
Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kabu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
19 minutes past 9. Let's continue with political analyst Rejoice Ngwenya about the latest situation in Zimbabwe that suggests that there may be a rift, and a serious one, between Constantine Chiwenga and his leader, President Emerson Mnangagwa. You were saying before we lost our connection, Mr. Ngwenya, that there has been exaggeration. In fact, that Zimbabweans who've watched the scene play out, not only between Robert Mugabe and Emerson Mnangagwa, it is the same with Constantine Chiwenga and Emerson Mnangagwa as well.
Yeah, what's surprising? Sorry about getting off Tsepiso. What's surprising about this whole saga is that most people that are talking about Chiwenga are not him. Christopher Mtswangwa is talking about Chiwenga. Geza is talking about Chiwenga. There are so many individuals that are talking about this thing, and he himself, Tsepiso, has never come out guns blazing to say, I am preparing to take over this government. he's been rallying behind, Mnangagwa and praising him from all angles. So this is why I'm a bit reluctant to say that there is obviously a rift, because he himself has not been able to stand out in the open to say his political position. But we are all surprised why he has suddenly been excited about this issue of corruption and criminals around Mnangagwa, because he knows the story. He was part of the deal, and we believe that is absolute hypocrisy.
But it also takes me to the issue that I was speaking about when we had lost connection with you, that it's almost a repeat of what we saw at some point. Emmerson Mnangagwa, ED, as he was referred to then before he became president, was very much in line with any conversation around President Robert Mugabe, and yet he took over Robert Mugabe with the popular understanding that it was time for Robert Mugabe to step down. So is it possible that we may be seeing the beginnings of this play out between Constantine Chiwenga and Emmerson Mnangagwa, given the fact that 2028 is supposed to be his last year at the helm of not only Zimbabwe but of ZANU-PF as we understand it?
That's a very good observation, Tsepiso, because even during the time that Mnangagwa himself was being accused by what people would call G40, accused of wanting to take over from Mugabe, Mnangagwa himself never said anything. He was looking very patriotic and always behind Mugabe's messages. So the only difference now is that at that time, Chiwenga was in charge of the army. He was a very powerful army character, and we were not surprised when he came back into the fray. But what has happened now, the slight difference in terms of the script is that Chiwenga has been, his camouflage has been removed, and now he's a civilian. So Mnangagwa can lay claim into legitimacy in that he would say, I was voted for. And in any case, we don't know what were the backdoor arrangements that they had, who was going to take over. But it's obviously there's no smoke without fire. There must be something brewing, but I don't believe that it's got the kind of tectonic magnitude that it had. Look at what is happening today. There was virtually nobody in town talking about this thing, and I strongly believe that perhaps the Gaza phenomenon has been over-exaggerated.
Now, let's just focus on the party itself, the People's Conference. What is expected to come out of it? And internal revolt has been something that has been part of ZANU-PF since 1980, but it has remained very resilient. And is it because of, as has been the accusation by many of its detractors, that of the patronage network and those who benefit from it?
Absolutely. When South Africans talk about political conferences, they obviously expect things like strategic, direction of the party, policy, and so forth. But when we talk about conferences, particularly in ZANU-PF, we are so aware of the shenanigans and the narratives that are about fractions and confusions and splits. So, because the Mnangagwa phenomenon is so dominant within the ZANU-PF arena, it is very unlikely that individuals will come up with specific proposals. I know that Mchang was talking about economic policies, but we all know that our economy is on its knees, and we have a very dysfunctional financial and fiscal policy. So other than praise singing and telling the world that Mnangagwa's term has been successful, he has done so many great things in terms of attracting investment, which has not created employment anyway, I don't foresee anything that is particularly tangible coming out of this conference, other than the usual choir boys great thing about why Mnangagwa has to be there in 2030, which is, of course, what unsettles certain progressive ZANU-PF forces within the party.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights, political analyst Rejoice Ngwenya, speaking to us about developments in Zimbabwe as the governing party, ZANU-PF, holds its annual annual People Conference, and there are rumors abound of a split in the hierarchy of ZANU-PF. Brings the time to 25 minutes past 9.
The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@sabc. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
And that's what we continue to do, not only developing stories, but stories that have been ongoing conversation. And this time we look at one of those, South Africa's gambling sector. It's posted record-breaking figures. The National Gambling Board saying that the industry recorded over $6 trillion turnover in the 2024-2025 financial year, underscoring the scale and complexity of one of the country's most lucrative and controversial industries. According to the board's annual report, the turnover represents the total amount wagered across casinos, betting platforms, lotteries, and online gambling. While turnover doesn't quite equal profit, it signals a major rise in gambling activity, particularly in the fast-expanding online betting and iGaming sectors, which continue to outpace traditional casinos. We're joined now by the acting CEO of the National Gambling Board, Mr. Lungile Tukwana. Very good evening to you, Mr. Tukwana. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So, 1.5 trillion, I believe. Any CEO would be proud of that figure. But can you just tell South Africans exactly how much that money translates into not only real revenue, but how you came about this, which was the major contributing platform?
Right. Good evening, Tsepiso and the SABC viewers. Look, I think that gambling is one of the contributors, I think, to our economy, huge contributor. Now, obviously, it's driven by government policy, the operators that are in the space, and what we refer to as the PLA, which is the ones who are licensing mainly some of these operators that we actually have. So in a sense, what you're basically looking at there, you are looking at the rise in the gambling sector as it is suggested. And I think that the GGR, which is what we call the gross gambling rate, we're saying that we're sitting at the 75 billion. The majority of that is actually the money that is related to online betting, as we call it. You will remember that there are four modes that you basically have, one of them being the betting sector. Now, that has grown a lot, especially as it suggests the online one. And the causes for the growth of that one are mainly due to the issue of the ease of access of that, in the sense that you can access some of those on your cell phone, on your desktop, and the other easier ways of doing it. Now, the disadvantage of that for the casinos is that people may not necessarily just see the need to go to the casinos. They may want to play on their phone because it has no costs, but also you don't spend a lot of time driving there, so to speak. So it becomes easier to actually accept that. And I think that you would trace it back to the COVID times when the casinos actually went a little bit down. They went down big time because they were not allowed to actually go out at the time. Now, people obviously moved to the online betting, which is what saw the highest growth, as you would be able to see from our slides, so to speak. So that is why we are seeing those particular numbers. It's good, it's bad. It's good in the sense that it's a major contributor to the economy. I think that's number one. But on the other hand, you look at the other issues about the harm and the social effects of that and how it's being managed in general. So it is a progress on the other hand, but it gives us certain responsibility in terms of making sure that we deal with the socio-economic consequences.
And let's talk about the responsibility, because one does wonder how much of that money actually reaches the fiscus through taxes. Can you give us a sense of that?
If you look at the taxes that we actually got from that GGR, you will see that we got just over 5 billion of the money that goes to taxes and the other related stuff that is basically there. So one would argue that that is not a lot of money compared to the figure we're basically talking about, which points us to the need to make sure that we need to reform or to relook at the policy that deals with the aspects of online gambling and the other related stuff that may be there. Because it is, I think the levels of tax are not as high at that particular level. So it's one of the areas that policymakers may need to actually look at to make sure that we strengthen in a sense.
So the digital transformation strategy that is in place, or that is, in the offing, are you then saying that there are loopholes there? And does it also facilitate those particularly provincial gambling authorities who are sidestepping the strictures of the national framework, therefore perpetuating that fragmentation of the system? Is that where part of the blame lies?
I wouldn't necessarily blame any particular structure around that issue. Suffice to say that we all know that the National Gambling Act is an act that came in 2004. Now, when you look at 2004 and now, surely there has been a lot of developments. I think even in the online space, we would not have seen a lot of the online at that particular point, but now it has become the most prevalent way in which the people do their business, do their activities, and it becomes an issue that is there. Especially, we believe that some section of section 11 of the Act may need to be revisited to make sure that it caters for the current realities that are there. I wouldn't think that the PLAs are violating necessarily the requirements that we actually have in terms of the Act. I think it's an indication of the fact that there's a need for us to revisit. But also you'll bear in mind that the PLAs themselves have their own legislation that governs the gambling and their economic realities that they are facing in the various provinces. So there's need for harmonization of some of those and alignment in some of the aspects that we basically have. So we have all responsibilities when it comes to that, and we need to work together as the state entities.
But there is a recognition that there are some major failures in the system. I mean, the Auditor General's qualified report did point to specific weaknesses in internal controls and grant management systems, and there were huge amounts of money that have been reported as either missing, and that's also beyond the underspending, which is supposed to go towards assisting in socio-economic hardships.
Well, I'm not sure which report you do be would you be referring to, because NGB for the 2024-25 got a clean audit. There was no underspending at the NGB, and that is what we're communicating to the portfolio committee, that we did quite well. We actually got a clean audit, so we don't have those challenges at the NGB. The main issues that we're dealing with at NGB are the issues around the gambling. So, and some of the areas that we are dealing with at the gambling is an issue of the enforcement, the act itself, the issue of the compliance around it. We don't do any grants at the NGB. So I think that you would not have got from the side of the NGB. Perhaps you would have confused the other report that was presented, because it was us and the NLC.
You are right, because I am referring actually to the NLC, but the point I was actually trying to point to, and I should have been clearer in that, is about the sector, that it does face that problem. I mean, there is there is alignment within the structure of the entities.
Well, it is always important that we become very prudent in the way we use the resources of the state, especially to advance those areas that are going to make sure that we enhance the services that are supposed to be delivered to the society in general, because they are the beneficiaries of the services that we actually render on our side. But I think that one of the reasons why gambling is also important is that because it contributes obviously to the fiscus, it also contributes to the creation of the employment that we see from time to time, and it may not be as major because, for example, we would be looking at the figures that we're actually producing of the jobs that are created in terms of gambling. So in a sense that we believe that there should be strengthening of the way we deliver our services, the way we regulate. I think especially we are a regulator, and the way that we make sure that from time to time there's contribution to the fiscal so that we get deliver better services.
And the self-regulation, do you think it is working to the good of South Africans in general? Because one would say that in as much as there is something for you to celebrate, there are still holes in the treatment services that remain severely underfunded.
Well, yeah, I think that on our side, I think as NGB, part of the issues we are looking at now, for example, includes how we really regulate the advertising aspect of gambling. Because that aspect, if it just works on its own, it's not regulated, or we're not enforcing the law that has been given, then we're going to fall short in terms of making sure that it is something that is properly handled. It is something that the unintended consequences are actually managed. So in a sense that it's important for us to work on the issue of the advertising to make sure that it doesn't affect the people that are vulnerable groups that may not have been intended to get such messages. But also the messages themselves should not be misleading because it may lead to people rushing to gamble. But we had intended for gambling to be actually a recreative activity rather than an activity that people are using as income generation. That is what we were looking at, and that is what we should still maintain. So we cannot just leave it. We need to regulate properly. We need to make sure that we implement the law, because the laws that we have must be implemented properly to make sure that we get the results that were intended when the NGA was put in place.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Tukwana. And I must say that perhaps we as South Africans need a fuller picture, especially on the technical delineation of roles between all the entities within the gambling sector, because I also admit to some level misunderstanding some of the entities within the framework and their responsibilities. Mr. Lungile Tukwana is the acting CEO of the National Gambling Board.
The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. but sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
So we continue talking gambling in South Africa, but this time we look at it from the perspective of who really is spending their money, hard-earned money, and can they afford to? We on the line to Lebogang Soheng, Advocacy and Communications Manager, the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation, to speak about responsible gambling and the impact it has on people and households. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, Lebogang. Just looking at those figures, a 1.5 trillion rands in turnover for the gambling sector for this financial year. What is your understanding of it? Who is spending this money? Because I saw, an infographic actually giving down the breakdown of who is spending what. And it seems that it's definitely people who can ill afford to gamble.
Good evening, Tsepiso, and thank you for having us. I think the figure, the latest figures that have come out in terms of the revenue that the gambling industry has generated over the past financial year is a staggering figure. But in terms of the South African Responsible Gambling point of view, where we offer free treatment and counseling to those that are impacted by problematic gambling, is that the intent of gambling has changed. It's no longer about recreational activity and just taking a chance and betting what it was intended it to be in the first place. What we're now finding is that a lot of people that are coming forward for treatment kind of got involved in excessive gambling, and the gambling intent was more about a secondary income. Now, Tsepiso, you would know that we find ourselves in a very tough economic climate with about a 32% unemployment rate and high inflation, etc. So a lot of people are using gambling as a means to an end, secondary, which is not. And it has got devastating consequences, because if it's not done in moderation, it can cause a mental health condition known as disordered gambling if diagnosed.
What is in moderation? Sorry, I have to cut in, but what is in moderation when people are responding to gambling out of desperation? As you say, the sector it is no longer what it's intended to be, and I'd imagine that it's supposed to be some light entertainment. But if we're seeing people use their social grants, it's not a lot of money that are actually doing that. And it must be out of desperation because of the dire circumstances that they find themselves. So what would be moderate in that case? Should there be not zero gambling with your social grant money?
Look, Tsepiso, I mean, I guess we can't dictate what people do with their income and their money, whether it's social grants or whether you earn a salary or you're self-employed. I think what's important is gambling what you can afford to lose. And you can't really cap a figure to it. For somebody, 10 Rand might be too much. For somebody, 100,000 Rand might be too much. But it's being able to gamble what you can afford. And once you start gambling and betting with what you can't afford, and it disturbs your daily lifestyle and taking care of your day-to-day needs, then it becomes a problem. It is no longer gambling, because you're not doing it for entertainment. You are now doing it to supplement your income, and that's not what its intention was meant to be. And what we find with people who've come forward in terms of treatment and counseling is that it gets to a point where they would actually take their entire salary, they'd wait for the end of the month, take the entire salary and gamble and bet away with it, and then lose. And then they would then need to dig into their savings, into their credit cards, etc. And so what we're finding in the ecosystem, it's not only just affecting the individuals and the immediate household and family, it's now also impacting in the financial sector in terms of banks, because people aren't able to then repay their financial commitments. And as we know, that issues of problematic gambling come with issues of debt.
Now, what I've seen, and we've just been speaking about it with Mr. Tukwana, the Gambling Board CEO, is the increase, especially in online gambling. Sports betting is a huge industry. And I want to talk about regulation. I've watched colleagues who honestly, on a daily basis, that's what they're talking about, almost on an hourly basis. I'm on WhatsApp groups where people justify it by saying the amount of money that they're getting back. And you know, one would rationalize and say, well, if you're getting your money back, it's okay. But I just want to understand it. I'm not a big gambler. I don't even really understand gambling. So if you could just break it down for me, what are the major triggers? How do people understand what they're doing and the cycle of the mental health effect?
I think I'm glad you raised that, Tsepiso. I think a lot of people, and those, they are people who gamble responsibly and who understand the betting markets, and who really understand what they are getting themselves into and know the risks that are associated with it. And there are others, unfortunately, that don't really understand, kind of the wagering process and how it really technically works. But just to give you an idea from a gambling intent perspective, as I say, there are different reasons that drive people to gamble in the first place. So yes, initially you want to take a bet, try a luck, get some money out of it. If you win, you lose. But there are various other factors that drive. Others could be biological. And when I talk about biological, there are people, or some people, or most people are genetically predisposed to some sort of addiction. It's genetics, it's within our genes. And others, then their choice of addiction would then become gambling. Others could be psychological, with psychological comorbidities, obviously once diagnosed, whether it's depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, personality disorder, etc., that will drive that gambling intent. Others would be social, others would be environmental, and under environmental would be the socioeconomic, issues that drive people. But most importantly, what a lot of people don't realize is that, gambling, as you kind of engage in wagering and gambling, there's a hormone in our brains called dopamine, the happy chemical. And if one is not really cognizant in terms of just checking their behavior, because then it now moderates the behavior. And research has found that, people that engage in gambling, it has an impact on their brain reward system, and it triggers the release of dopamine in the neurotransmitter in the brain. And then what that happens is it surges, the surge leads to a temporary sense of euphoria in the brain, and it elevates. So it becomes a thing where people are now chasing the feeling rather than actually the money of wagering. And so there's various ways. Yes.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I think it's a question we need to revisit, particularly to look at who benefits the most, particularly on a lack of regulation. But I think it's an important conversation to repeat. Lebogang Soheng, Advocacy and Communications Manager at the South African Responsible Gambling Foundation.
Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Annika Longi sur Channel Africa.
Comment est-ce que les militants et sympathisants du parti Les Transformateurs ont-ils réagi face à la condamnation de Succès Masra?
La condamnation de Succès Masra ne nous a pas surpris et les militants transformateurs ont été bouleversés et indignés étant donné que le verdict est un verdict lourd, illégal, injuste et donc face à la répression dans laquelle le peuple tchadien est confronté, les militants transformateurs se sont résignés de ne pouvoir pas sortir manifester. Et donc, c'est une situation totalement absurde pour un pays. Et aujourd'hui, nous célébrons le 11 août, fête de l'indépendance. On pensait que le verdict allait être plus ou moins clément, mais le verdict est sévère.
Annika Longi, tous les dimanches sur Mix Vibration.
The pulse of the continent in 60 minutes. Stay informed and inspired with Africa World Hour on Channel Africa.
And on a Friday, as usual, we ease you off with some music. We look at Tanzania as the source of that, where one woman has turned rhythm into revolution. She's a rapper, radio host, environmental advocate, and social activist known across East Africa as the Madame President of Rap. From Bongo Star Search to Amplifier on Clouds FM, and through her work empowering young women and protecting the planet, Frida Amani is showing what it means to use art for action. Frida, welcome to Africa World Hour, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And, I wish we had time to share some of your music, but I'm sure we will be able to do that when we share this interview. So your first entry into the scene through Bongo Star Search back in 2015. Tell us where, that's really got you to your mission in the country.
Okay, so Bongo Star Search is really famous in Tanzania. Is one of the most huge talent search ever. So I decided to join Bongo Star Search because I knew it was going to be like a platform for me, and which it became a platform. It gave me a name, not necessarily a name, but it gave me, it allowed people to know what I am doing as an artist, and it's good that I did join Bongo Star Search. From there, I decided to start doing my own music and pushing my own art to now where I am, which it made it easier for people. I got famous there, but started doing so much after Bongo Star Search.
And when you say you started doing so much, give us a sense of what you have been able to do, and what first gave you the idea that you could use your talent, rap, your music for social change, not just self-expression?
That is because of my experience. From where I am from, in Tanzania, I did struggle so much. When I wanted to, when I wanted to come out, the fact that I wasn't allowed to do music, the surrounding wasn't helping, the environment wasn't accepting as much. So I decided, if one day I'm gonna be able to be out there, I'm just gonna use what I have to help, to change, to help so many people. I remember growing up, there were so many talented people that I knew, not only in music industry, others were just playing football. Young women who were great, but they couldn't be who they were supposed to be. So I decided it's not going to be the same way for me, but also I decided, if I'm going to get out there, I should use my voice in the right way. I think that's the reason why I have so many projects that I talk about women empowerment, how I talk about a girl child, how I talk about it's time now to support girls, to allow girls to be themselves. Even one of my biggest song, Madam President, the message, what I was saying, at the time we were having our president, Samia, was coming in the country, was now becoming a president. I felt to say the word, if we have a female president, we can have anyone who's doing anything can become a president in what they're doing, especially to the girls. So that's the message.
So you're saying
I've actually have so many songs that I talk about girls empowerment.
You say you were prevented from doing some of the things that you wanted to do. And can you tell me why?
Yes.
And even President Samia Suluhu Hassan herself recognizes that title of Madame President of Rap, as in your music. So that's high praise to you. But tell us how you're able to break through that ceiling. What was preventing you from, not only yourself, but other girl children from expressing themselves?
I think it's for me personally, I think it's the fact that I was doing hip hop and it wasn't something that they were ready to see me doing art. They didn't see if it's gonna be something that's gonna change my life. They didn't see a future. So I understand when it comes to my parents. But when I went out there, when I started rapping at the streets, how people were viewing me, how they saw it was like a taboo. It was something that they were not ready to see a woman doing, a girl doing. So I realized it wasn't just me. There was like a limitation of what we can be or what we can do just as being a girl. They were not looking at the fact that we can be talented and do this. They were just looking at the fact like you're doing this and you're a girl. It's the same for the female footballers that I know of. So to me, I said, if I'm gonna break this, I'm not just gonna end it with me. I should do more, and that's the reason why. Even with the song, it really helped so many girls in Tanzania. I believe they decided also to be very loud with what they were doing, and I think that's the reason why Madam President Samia Suluhu Hassan quoted my song. For that purpose, because it was inspiring to many girls.
Are you
and
able
it
to
got
just
really
share with
famous.
us? Are you able to just share with us what that song is? I know no artists don't really like it when we ask them to break out into a song, but it would just be good to share with our audience the type of message that you do. And, I'd like you to use that as a moment that inspires young people in Tanzania as they prepare for the upcoming elections.
Come again so that I can understand. Do you want me to tell you what the song is about?
What the song is, and even if you can perform it, we wouldn't mind that, just so that we can get a sense of what you do and who you are when you perform.
Okay. So the way the song goes is like kwenye rap game, I'm the Madam President. So it's more like in the rap game, call me Madam President, head of the government. And then I feel like Mama Samia. I don't know if I can be able to rap right now. It's just going to be a little bit different.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind
if
if you want to, if you feel inspired.
Thank you. But that's the message of the song. I talk about how I can inspire a girl child that you can be able, if as long as we have a female president in our country, it's something that we didn't think was ever going to happen, but now it is happening. And of course, with the elections, and I don't know what will happen, but she's here. I believe she's here to stay. And also to break, I don't know if it's right if I say sexism, but the fact that it's not easy for a woman, a girl, to be in a certain position. So I decided to inspire them by using what I believe. I did it for myself. I'm in a game, I'm doing rap. So anyone can do what they want to do and they can be who they're supposed to be.
It's very interesting. I mean, you've got many projects, including your project Performance for Nature, including the Mtoe Mama Gizani campaign and Divas Dynasty. Just share a little bit about what you're trying to do with that and how you've been able to inspire others in your country to follow suit.
Okay, so Mtoe Mama Gizani means bring the mother to the light. From where I am from, okay, I now live in Dar es Salaam because that's where the music scenery is. But I was born in Arusha and I've experienced different things in Arusha, and I wanted to be able to help the women who they're bringing kids to the world, but there are places that does not have electricity. So I thought of a way that we can help them. So we decided to run a campaign called Mtoe Mama Gizani, Bring the Mother to the Light, where we go to rural areas and we put solar energy at the maternity wards. So that's for Mtoe Mama Gizani. But yeah, Performance for Nature. I am an environmentalist. I have this saying, I love plants. So I love seeing the world as it is. I think it's very beautiful. And I think it's very nice to be able to use your voice to change the world if you can.
Frida,
and even if you cannot change the whole world.
I'm so sorry to stop you there, but I think it's a beautiful note to end it on, to say, even while you're changing the world, appreciate it for what it is, what is around you. And congratulations to you. All the best to you. Frida Amani is a rapper, activist, and proud daughter of Tanzania, speaking to us on Africa World Hour as we wrap up the day, wrap up the week. Sheila and Dukumana, how are you wrapping up African Diaries today?
Listen, I was triggered by the weather. Okay. Firstly, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I was triggered by the weather, and yesterday I fell sick, and I noticed that my producer fell sick today. So I was like, wait a minute.
We've also had that this week on the team. We've been playing tag.
Yeah. So this got me thinking. I mean, it's one thing for it to affect us on the ground tangibly, physically. How does this affect restaurants? Right? This climate change situation. I can imagine the crops not having enough water, perhaps too much sunlight. And so we speak to Chef TJ, who is the founder and owner of Black Bean Takeria. It's based in Zimbabwe. And he's going to be telling us how they are navigating that terrain in Zimbabwe specifically, but of course extending the context to the continent. Then in the second hour of the show, we get into Hot 6 love songs. Tsepiso, listen, if you want to communicate with your special somebody, okay?
We've had this conversation.
DJ K Vibes is helping you. And he's themed it for us today. He says how music can make you fall in love. So this is the kind of songs you play prior to the connection forming. This is just like a prelude.
To inspire you.
Yes.
To heat it up.
You know what I mean? Yourself.
It.
Exactly. It's like, when you send reels, I don't know if this happens across all boards, but you send reels to that special somebody and you giggle and you cackle together over something. Maybe you send them this song, you're just like, I like this song.
Funny. Well, for me, music is my love language, but across all my relationships, it's not even romantic. So I do feel a connection with someone when I say, and that is my way of saying, I enjoy your company. I like talking to you. But I do that with my family. I do it with my friends. And so music is right up there in terms of my love language.
So essentially, if we haven't gotten a song from you, Tsepiso, so we know where we stand with you. And that's what we're doing on the show.
Then I've got a whole hour, 60 minutes. I'll compile one just for you, for African Diaries. Will you allow me?
Yes, please.
Okay, we'll do that. Well, that's it from us. It's goodbye. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing, listening here on Channel Africa, and of course, your weekend.